There we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tyler Landry. I'm a solutions architect here at Civis. Thanks for joining our Lunch and Learn on Civis AI. So today we'll be explaining how AI is transforming data workflows, and we'll be talking about a case study by Climate Advocacy Lab. So let me just give you that agenda. So first, I'll give you an overview of Civis and how we're thinking about AI. After that, we'll hear from the Climate Advocacy Lab about how AI helped them turn a process that used to take months into hours. And finally, I'll wrap up with some other use cases from our customers, and then we will open up for questions. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature. You'll find it on the Shapes menu in the lower right corner. We'll answer them at the end of the webinar. First, I'd like to let Kate and Mark from the Climate Advocacy Lab introduce themselves.
Hey there, I am Kate McKenney. I'm the Managing Director of the Climate Advocacy Lab. So I lead all the programming. I have a background in data and analytics, digital, and spent a bunch of years at NRDC working on those things. I'll hand it over to Mark.
Thanks, Kate. My name is Mark Rustino. I'm a data analyst for Climate Advocacy Lab. I also run my own analytics consultancy. It's called Mycelium Strategies, and I work with nonprofits and social justice organizations to help them, make dashboards and data analytics products and stuff like that.
Thank you both. And on the Civis side, we have Matt Fessler and myself. If you want to say a few words, Matt.
I was on mute. Hi, I'm Matt Fessler. I'm head of product, and I work on the platform here at Civis Analytics with our engineering team to help prioritize and build new features.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move forward and give you just an overview of Civis and what we do. So we are a data and analytics tech company for public good organizations, including state and local governments, nonprofits, and other agencies in this space. We're over 10 years old, and we partner with some of the largest organizations across the world to empower data-driven decision-making. Civis Analytics is a one-stop shop analytics workbench and data warehousing software. So you can see all of these here. This visual kind of represents the types of tools you might be already using to do your work, and Civis can integrate those functions. For example, at a high level, we provide 4 primary components of a modern data platform. So we provide data ingestion and warehousing, provide the tools and integrations to bring your data together in a scalable and secure environment. We also consider security to be paramount. Civis is SOC 2 Type 2 certified and FedRAMP approved. The platform has role-based access control to ensure your data is secure, well-governed, and it has end-to-end encryption. Next, we have analytics and an AI workbench. Civis, has a simple unified interface for in-house data teams to write and automate their analytics and AI workflows right there in the UI. And lastly, we have, reporting and data visualization tools. We offer out-of-the-box integrations with Tableau and other visualization tools to build and distribute custom reports. So Civis simplifies the entire data process, provides organizations with the tech that they need to make more informed decisions and to drive meaningful outcomes. So now I'm going to pass it over to Matt Fessler to talk about how Civis is thinking about AI.
Thank you. Thanks, Tyler. So Civis and AI. We here at Civis are always trying to look to improve our data platform and make sure that we're providing the latest and greatest tools that are available. And as part of that, within the data platform, we've been trying to figure out how to provide something that would be useful to our customers and to new new potential customers with AI. AI has been kind of this thing that's been put out there over the last few years that's been promising the world and also scaring a lot of people about what it can and can't do. So what our philosophy has been to make sure that we can provide AI in an intuitive, easy to use way, but also in a useful way. And what I mean by that is when we're looking at providing AI tools, we have two major focus areas. One being AI for analytics, which is a way to utilize AI on your data in ways to either interpret the data or put some more structure around the data, or to maybe categorize or synthesize that data so it's more useful to you in doing some sort of analysis or doing reporting, make it easier to use that way. And then the other side that we're trying to utilize AI for is to help increase productivity. So within our platform, there are some technical challenges or some things that you might be trying to figure out how to use. So we have our Civis AI support chatbot, as well as SQL AI Assist, which I'm going to talk about here in a little bit more detail on the next slide. So if you don't necessarily know how to potentially write SQL queries because you're a little bit less technical, or if you forget some syntax, which I'm completely guilty of, you can utilize our SQL AI Assist feature to actually ask questions about your data using natural language. So you don't have to remember, oh gosh, is it the from or where first? You don't have to worry about that. You can ask it in natural language, and our AI SQL Assist will actually help you generate a SQL query, and then you can run that query on your data within a matter of seconds. This also has a feature functionality that will allow you to fix queries. So if you write a query and you have an error that pops up, this feature can actually help you fix that query, providing you some suggestions that you can accept or decline as well. And we recently had a customer that was using this feature that had a finance problem that they were always trying to solve for and get data on. And now it used to take them several hours to do, and now it just takes them a matter of 15 minutes. So that's a really kind of fun feature functionality that we're looking to add within terms of the productivity. But to get some more of how AI can be used within our platform, we're going to turn it over to Tyler to help introduce Climate Advocacy Labs.
Yes, so thank you so much, Matt. Now we're going to turn it over to Kate and Mark. They're going to talk about how they're analyzing communication data at scale to support the US climate movement, and how they're using Civis AI to speed up their process significantly. So take it away.
All right, I'm going to start us off. I thought I'd start just telling you a little bit about the Climate Advocacy Lab. We're a movement support organization, and we ground our work in evidence. So we provide a lot of insights, skills, and connections to advocates, researchers, organizers in the climate space. And really, the pillars of our work include training and really just creating a community where people can really support each other and share learnings. So about 2 years ago, we started, go back to the other slide first. About 2 years ago, we started a new project called the Clean Energy and IRA Hub. And the goal of the IRA Clean Energy Hub was really to provide a place where folks that were working on clean energy advocacy to come together to learn about digital ad data, messaging research, storytelling, and kind of provide a space where we could create an adaptive and evolving platform for people to learn with each other. I can go to the next one. Through that work, we developed something called our Community Data Initiative, which is a coordinated effort to aggregate advertising data across a bunch of community data partners. We realized there was like a really significant investment happening in the clean energy and IRA space through advertising. And our task was basically to try to figure out what we could learn from that in our shared learning platforms. So what we do is we provide benchmark analysis. We do detailed research on the different performances of advertising by different factors like audience, region, specific issues. We can break things down into buckets around EVs versus clean energy versus fossil fuel accountability. And it's really a place where we can come together and learn from each other in those efforts. When you can go to the next one. But what happened when we took on this project was there was a pretty big problem. There was about 13,000 different ads that we needed to analyze, and that was growing because it's a continual process of folks that are running ads. And so we were trying to figure out a scalable solution to sort of categorize this. The output of our data is anonymous as well. So we also wanted to create something that was secure. And so we started to look at different options. And if you've worked in advertising and you've worked with different organizations, you know that there's a lack of alignment across organizations and groups about how they structure their taxonomy, how they structure their campaigns. And also, it's really hard to enforce a common solution because most organizations are already have their own systems in place and don't have the capacity to take on new tagging structures. In addition to that, we have multiple advertising platforms that people are using, which means that there's different levels of data access. And it became abundantly clear really quickly that this was too much to do by hand. So we started exploring different options, and we're a member of the Movement Cooperative. And so we already had access to Civis. And so I put in a call and I was like, oh, what's going on with Civis AI? And really started to explore it as an option about how we could use it in this use case. Civis offers two different models that you can access. One's Anthropic's Claude and the other is Meta's Llama. We ended up narrowing in on Claude as the best solution for our use case. Before we go, I hand it over to Mark, and he talks a little bit about our technical solution. I wanted to sort of name the giant robot in the room. As a climate advocacy organization, you know, we're completely aware of some of the issues with AI. You know, the electronic waste, the amount of water that's being used, the extraction of minerals, and the carbon that's being emitted. But we've also kind of faced the inevitable need to be part of these technologies and hoping that our investment in them is a way for us to sort of like advocate for more equitable, transparent, and sustainable solutions. So we are on this journey, and at the same time that we're using these technologies, we're also hoping that it puts us in a place to be better advocates. I'm going to hand it over to Mark, who's going to talk through the tech of it all.
Thanks, Kate. Cool. So I'm going to dive into the weeds a little bit of the process, and we do have a Q&A at the bottom. So if you have questions or you need clarification, you can put questions in there, and if I miss them, we'll address them at the end of this section of the presentation. Yeah, so the initial database setup, which is visualized here in this slide, took advantage of a data pipeline tool called Adverity to collate ad data from dozens of different organizations into one database. The advertisers running the ads would authorize Adverity to read their ad data directly from Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever ad server they were running ads on, and then write the ad performance data into our BigQuery database daily, where we then combine and anonymize the performance data into one data set. All of the ad data was, oh, you can stay on that first slide there. All of the ad data was related to the Inflation Reduction Act, which is also known as the IRA. And our goal was to leverage the data set to report IRA-related benchmark data back to the groups so that they could measure their ad performance against a larger pool of ad data. Our initial attempt at coding the ad data for benchmarking was highly manual, but because we had all the data in a database, we knew we could leverage the Civis platform to try and automate the ad coding by using their new Civis AI toolset. Next slide, please. Thanks. So before the election, Climate Advocacy Lab had manually tagged 37% of the ads in this data set by using human coders. And those coders were real people that would look at the ad, review the content for a predetermined set of tagging categories, and then tag them in a spreadsheet. This process was super manual and time consuming and kind of onerous. And it ended up being too time consuming. And after the initial attempt at tagging ads, we never got around to doing it again. So new ads weren't being tagged or reviewed in the data set. So we had this giant data set of ads. We had tons of them that still needed to be tagged. And then there were new ads coming in every day into the community data set. So we realized we needed to take a step back and try and find a smarter way to ensure that the ads were getting accurately tagged in a timely manner. We were intrigued by recent developments of large language models like OpenAI's ChatGPT and whether or not they could be a potential solution. We already had, as Kate mentioned earlier, we already have access to the Civis platform from our partnership with the Movement Cooperative, and we knew that Civis had just launched an LLM integration that was available to the lab. So we decided to see if we could use it to automatically categorize the ads. The integration had an AI model from Anthropic called Claude, and we had just sort of settled on using that one. So we were able to feed the ads tagged by the human coders into Claude and then compare how Claude categorized them against how the human coders categorized them initially. We were also able to examine the results to understand where Claude was performing well and where it was missing the mark. Our target accuracy score was 88%, which was the agreement rate between the two human coders who had done the first tagging attempt. We figured if we could reach 88% agreement between Claude and the human coders, then we'd know that Claude was at least as good as the humans were at this specific tagging tasks. After each round of tagging, we'd then update the prompt, input it to Claude, and try and get it to do a better job. This process is called prompt engineering, and after several rounds of this, we were able to get Claude to an accuracy rate of 91%, which is better than the agreement rate of the two human coders. Next slide, please. So I just want to do a quick focus on prompt engineering and what it is and how it relates to this process. So modern LLMs come pre-trained on enormous data sets immediately out of the box. That means that instead of investing your time training the model on your data set, you spend your time wordsmithing the way you talk to the LLM in order to get the outcome you want. Prompt engineering is much easier than traditional model training, and anyone can do it. This slide here is an example of one of the prompts we used to train Claude along with a sample edit. So this prompt was almost the most basic task. We wanted Claude to look at the ad itself and decide whether or not it was relevant to the data set, whether or not it was IRA related. So you can see this is the prompt that we fed into Claude. It basically says, you're looking at ad data, try to predict whether or not the ad relates to the Inflation Reduction Act or not. Data includes ad names, content, and metadata. Categorize the ad as IRA related or not IRA related. Respond with just your categorization. An ad can only be one category. And then this is initially we said, if you don't know the answer, say you don't know. And when we inputted that into Claude, Claude would respond with sort of this long-winded response saying, I don't know if this is IRA related or not. And it was sort of like bloviated in its response. So we realized that wasn't working, and we just sort of changed it to, if you don't know, leave it null. And by doing that, instead of getting this weird, like overly complex response, we either got IRA related, not IRA related, or a null response. So this is sort of an example of what prompt engineering is. It's basically just wordsmithing. You can stay on that last slide. Thank you. Each LLM has a handbook on their site with sample prompts, tips, and best practices on how to manage the model through your prompt. So you write a prompt, you run it through the LLM, measure how it performs, and then make adjustments. In our case, we already had this data set of thousands of ads tagged by human coders to validate against. by measuring the prompt performance against the human tag ads, we could measure exactly where the system was succeeding and where it was falling short. Next slide, please. Thank you. Once we felt confident about the prompt engineering and how the performance of our metadata predictions were going along, we daisy-chained this LLM process into a Civis workflow. The workflow would check for new ads, make sure they have all the necessary content for prediction, make the necessary metadata predictions, append those predictions to the data set, and then mark the ad as processed and record how many predictions it made to a log. Civis's drag and drop workflows feature made constructing this complicated process pretty simple. Here you can see a screenshot of the actual workflow on the left here. So each part of the process is one of these boxes, and you attach them in the order in which you want them to run, and it moves through linearly until each step is completed. The workflow allows you to mix and match different database functions, SQL, Python, LLM predictions, and more, and in the order that you need it in order to get the job done. And once you have the workflow working correctly, you can schedule it to run at your desired cadence, and it'll report back whether or not it ran successfully or not. Next slide, please. Thanks. So now we had the ad data in the database, and it was tagged. Now that that's there, we've been able to build this benchmarking dashboard for lab members to use in their own work. This is a screenshot of it there on the left. The digital ad benchmarking dashboard allows ad practitioners to understand how their clean energy and IRA advertising compares to other contributing groups. It provides benchmark data on performance across key indicators like cost per click, cost per 1,000 impressions, click-through rate, and it allows us to look at the impressions and spend to determine what's driving the benchmarks. So now that we have this tool, we're primed to do a deeper analysis on the data set because we can sort by platform, region, messaging type, language, audience, call to action, and more. And we're only able to do this thanks to LLM tagging of the data and Civis's workflow tools. And now that we have this process completed, we're still working on a plan to regularly validate the predictions so that we can be sure that they continue to work as expected into the future. That's all I think.
I think I'm going to talk a little bit how this looks in real life. So yeah, this is an example of some of the content that we're looking at. And this really has let us kind of pull apart the different attributes and understand large data volumes of ads. So for example, we can look at, key themes like different villains that folks are looking at. What are the tone and messaging types that are working with different folks? And then really look at regions and audiences. So it's making us spend less time doing data processing and more time looking at the content. You can go to the next one. And, really, it's just been a time saver for us. We were sort of paralyzed by the amount of time it was taking to human code. And now we have this sort of live feed of content that we can really dig into. And this has become even more important. Before the election, we were doing a lot of work looking at, sort of how the implementation of the IRA was going. And now we're facing a different battle. And organizations are really facing limited capacity and budget cuts and things like that, which really leaves the space for us to help fill the gaps in analysis for them. And then, there's really important themes that we're also digging into, like disinformation and clean energy siting and protecting environmental justice initiatives. And so, yeah, it's just been a really great effort for us to be able to provide more to the community.
Thank you guys. Thank you both. And like we said, you can put any questions you have in the Q&A chat. That was a really interesting look at how you're, using AI at the Climate Advocacy Lab, and it's great to see real-world examples like that. So to wrap up, to go off of that, I just want to share some examples of how other customers are using AI in their analytics workflows. For example, some of them are using it to analyze their donor CRM notes to help them better understand donor interests and engagement patterns. Others are using AI to analyze open-ended survey responses. So they're automatically categorizing thousands of responses to identify key themes and insights. We've seen some teams use AI to analyze their email campaigns, so they can identify which messaging approaches and formats perform the best with different audiences. And some of them are using AI to extract key information from documents like resumes, grants, contracts, and saving themselves hours of manual review time. So these are just some examples of what's possible. We're excited to continue developing and integrating AI into our platform to help our customers achieve their goals. So thank you everyone so much. We're going to move on now to the QA portion. Give me 1 second because I'm just going to open up that side here and see what questions we've got. All right. Question we have any partner organizations expressed concerns about AI being used for this project, about the results being informed by an AI process?
I can talk about that a little bit. It's definitely something that we're very transparent about with our partners. Maybe someone from Civis can also expand on this. But one of the reasons that we worked with Civis is that it's an enclosed environment. So what we're working with is sort of like walled off and secured in a way that we feel comfortable. And so when we enter, we have a very transparent data sharing practice. And so when somebody comes on with a data partner, we walk through all the steps and all the technologies and the way their data is being handled. So there's been definitely it hasn't been a barrier for anyone because we've been very thoughtful about privacy and security, but it's definitely a continuing conversation with a lot of partners.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that just from the Civis platform side. This will also answer another question that's in the chat. The data is not being used to train the LLM. It is going, it's staying in your platform. It's not being used to train it. So we're keeping it secure. And we do have documentation available in our Zendesk articles to kind of highlight how the data is secured and all that, and how the LLM is interacting with it. So again, not being used to train it.
One last question I see. I'm to the Climate Advocacy Lab. Do you have any suggestions or lessons learned for anyone kind of starting this type of project?
Mark, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think we were definitely really careful about not just letting the LLM loose on the data set and just assuming everything would go to plan, So we tried to put in guardrails for what we wanted it to predict. So we pre-created the taxonomy that we wanted it to tag on the data set so that it was easier to train it into giving us good responses. And then we also had pre-coded ads that were tagged by humans that were categorized in a way that we knew was acceptable or accurate, so that when we asked the LLM to make the predictions, we could then compare them against what we knew the correct answers were and see how it was doing, and then go back and adjust that prompt so that it would, where it was missing the mark, it would do a little bit better. So I think that's sort of like that sort of project management, providing guardrails and really organizing your project so that you know what you're getting, and that you're aiming towards an expected result is really this sort of management that is going to create a successful campaign where if you're bringing in partners, also and they want them, other people in your organization, you want them to have faith in the results. That's like sort of the best way to do that, where you could then show them, hey, we know this is accurate because we asked it to do something, it's doing it, it's meeting these expected accuracy requirements. And when it's not, we're working on it until it reaches that. So it's like organizing the project and bringing people in so that they can have faith in the results.
I'd say the other thing that was a really big lesson, which was also validating in those fears you have about AI taking your job, was that it really does have limitations. So one of the limitations of this project is that Claude can only look at text. And as you know, we're analyzing a lot of ad content that has images and video and all sorts of other things. And so we realized pretty quickly, like, some of the things that we were hoping that Claude could do for us, like looking at tone or other things like that, are a real limitation, because sometimes the text in an ad is really different than the tone of the actual piece of content. And so that's opened up to us like an opportunity to sort of do other research, so that we're making sure we're supplementing the work that the model's doing with our own analysis. And so that's a different limitation. And a really funny thing we learned is, like, we're working on this validation process with human coders, and it's just kind of revealed our own biases that come into things. We'll have, there's like 3 of us doing coding, and we've all worked in this work for like most of our careers, and we'll code things completely different from each other. So it's been a really interesting process.
Thanks, guys. The next question I'm seeing is, how many different features or tags were generated by the AI?
Go ahead, Mark. You probably know.
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it was, we had, probably 6 to 10 different categorizations, and within each categorization there was 3 to 10 tags. And so it was doing quite a bit, and it could have done more. It's just like, what is our capacity to sort of each extra thing you add, you need to QA, and it creates extra work. So we tried to limit the scope of the project to something that we could track, especially at the beginning, so that we didn't get overwhelmed.
Thank you. Our next question is probably for someone at Civis, either Matt Fessler or Matt Brennan. Are there methods in place for testing in parallel the performance of Claude versus Meta large language models?
From a feature standpoint, there's no direct testing area for this, but you could set up a Claude and a Llama script and run them on your data sets and run different sample sizes on them and kind of compare and contrast them. But there's no direct compare and contrast feature. But you can easily set up those 2 functions and see the results of them. And Mark, do you want to highlight? I think you did some pre-testing before you went into choosing Claude, correct?
We did. We started off by doing very small samples of data just to see what was going on. I think what ended up happening with Claude was I think the Llama tool wasn't quite working right out of the gate, and then Claude we had on a one-shot first attempt, it was hitting 70%, and then we did 1 revision and it was already past our accuracy goal. So then we didn't even bother with Llama at that point.
Perfect. Awesome.
Great. Thanks, guys. There's just a couple more here. Why would you use the AI tools within Civis software and not a separate or dedicated AI tool? He has to sell ourselves a little bit on this.
I can answer a little bit, and then someone from Civis can. I can say definitely with part of that in that one slide that had the workflows. So Civis allowed us to not just do the AI prediction, but then create a workflow so that we could then pipeline the data into the correct place. We could also use SQL to line up the data to be predicted, and then funnel it into the prediction process, and then record how many predictions were made. And now everything that we do is in a database, and there's a log that records. We created a log that records every prediction made so that we can see how many predictions it's making every week. We can control the cost and make sure costs aren't getting out of hand. And because of the way the workflows work, we could continue to build off of this, off of the workflow that we have already made, make it even more complicated and iterate until, it does pretty much whatever we need it to do.
And I will plus all of that and then add on the security element. I think just having the ease of use, being able to kind of control it within your own workflows and then have it all be done within a secure platform are the big advantages.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. I see one final question here. Has Civis started using AI to perform natural language processing to see themes and trends in large sample survey comments? And then go ahead.
So we don't have a tool for that, but we do have the scripts and the AIs that are doing that for you. So you can build a prompt that would do that fairly easily. We have had clients that are doing that, in particularly reading through the large text of a survey, open-ended survey response, and providing back some analysis on that, given the advanced prompting that we allow for in our tools.
And then just like a side question, any advice on dealing with context window limits or any testing on how this performs compared to other methods? Which I know you kind of answered.
I'm gonna pass to Brennan if he has any thoughts on that.
No, unfortunately not. We can get back on the exact context window size of the model, but especially with Core, it's a tool that we've just sort of put out there to see what people are able to do, like Climate Impact Lab. Happy to share out best practices as people find them.
Great, thank you. We have one more question I just saw. How long did the actual final Claude run on this full set of ads take? So what impacts the runtime? Is it word count in the ad transcripts, just the number of rows in the database, like one per ad, with rate limiting, or just the computation required?
I can answer that. It took, so we had that sort of 20,000 backlog of 20,000 ads, and that took about 4 hours to run. And it was definitely one ad per row. And you can, insert, it's a Redshift database that's running that's Cloud was running off of, which Redshift has a limit of 65,000 characters in a single row. So if you had, let's say you were predicting like the entire, like all 65,000, using all 65,000 characters, then that would take a little bit longer than fewer characters. That would also be more expensive. It's the credit feature is based on the number of characters that you send in. So definitely, yeah, it was the number of rows, though, I think was the biggest factor in how long it took. And once we got through that backlog, the process itself runs in about 15 minutes now, because there's usually only 100 or so rows. Great.
Thank you so much. And thank you both for agreeing to present on your AI use case at the Climate Advocacy Lab, and thank you, Matt Fessler, for explaining how Civis is using AI and how we're thinking about AI. We will be sending a recording and some documentation out after this meeting. And if you have any more questions that we didn't get to, you can definitely email support@civisanalytics.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you guys for joining, and have a good rest of your day.